My name is Justin. I'm 29 years old. I was a Jehovah's Witness, and I'm shunned.
All right, Justin. So how did you come to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the first place? Is it something you were born into?
No, actually, I wasn't raised in it. There's actually a picture of me as a baby getting baptized by a Catholic priest. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah. What actually happened, my mom had me pretty young. That's a pretty big life change, especially she was only 18 when she had me. So she wanted to give me the best start, especially, us being Black in America, her being a teen mother, me being a Black baby boy. Statistics were not on our side. So, so she wanted to give me the best chance. And typically, she'd be the kind of person that would shut the doors on witnesses. But at some point after having me, she did want to give me the best chance. And then, so she answered, she accepted the study. She went somewhat far into it. I think maybe to the point of a baptized publisher, and then decided to get away from it. So,
Okay.
So my exposure at that age was pretty much just my book of Bible stories, which the original one has pictures that has no point being showed to to little kids. I mean, just fireballs raining from the sky and stuff. That's like, no, that's too much for a 3-year-old. So, but that was my exposure up until I was about 10 years old.
Oh, okay. So when you were younger than that, you got a little taste of it, but things started to change when you were around 10. It's interesting. A lot of people that you see come into the witnesses later in life, a lot of times it is around an event, and oftentimes it is having a child, and people are looking for certainty, purpose, community, things to give to their kids, and there you go. So it sounds like that was the case for you. Your mom was wanting to give you something that she thought would give you a head start or a leg up or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
And then, a lot of times people also have their own issues too. And so they're looking for something. So 3-year-old you, so do you remember being so young and seeing the fireballs and everything in the book, the Bible story
Yeah.
book?
Yep. I remember the pillar of salt, the fireballs, all that stuff. I remember seeing it. I remember being scared of it, some of that stuff. And being told, not to be scared of it, and that's stories from the Bible and all this stuff. But it's still, the content of it is still a lot. Especially, I mean, I already mentioned the fireballs. You have the one where Cain killed Abel and stuff like that. You've got the blood and the gore, and in a book made for kids. By a religion that hates violence. So, yeah.
The Jehovah's Witnesses are so opposed to violence and sex and all these things that are all in the Bible and in their Bible storybook, right? And that book was pretty gory for a little kid to be reading that, and pretty interesting that somebody who saw this at 3, still has those, you still remember those things.
Yeah.
They were graphic for little kids.
Yes, yeah.
But that's also a way to instill that fear from a young age. That they kind of worship a violent God who's going to kill people at Armageddon, and so there's this basis for the fear that kind of runs throughout the narrative as they show it to you. So yeah, it's tough to see that.
Yes.
So I guess what happened between 3 and 10? Were things progressing in any way, or was there something that changed specifically when you got to 10 and started maybe being more introduced to it?
So between 3 and 10, religion didn't really play that much of a focus in my childhood through those years. We did go to a few churches here and there. But for the most part, I had my birthdays and holidays and all that stuff. Just a normal childhood. But at one point, we did start going to churches, and we did end up going to like this mega church at one point. And I remember there was this time when the preacher was on stage begging for money, and there was a literal parade of horses and motorcycles and stuff going around the auditorium. And, as he's on stage saying, we need more money, donate, and, passing the plate around. And that for my parents was enough at that point. So we stopped going to church.
Sounds like a circus.
Yeah, the literal circus. Yeah. And at around 9, I moved to a new neighborhood. And my 10th birthday party was my last one. And in that new house. And I should also add, so I grew up in a split family home. So I have my dad's house, and then I have my mom's house. So my dad, they were never in it. It was only my mom's side that was in it. And that kind of comes into play later on, because there did come a point where I just had to make a concrete choice. But yeah, so I in that new neighborhood, I went to 5th grade. This is also the year that 9/11 happened. So that kind of changed a whole lot, the way that people view the world and stuff. Added a lot more fear, and people were more open to listen. So basically what happened is school got out, 5th grade ended. During the summer months, I would go to my dad's house every other weekend, and then, for winter break and stuff like that, I would stay for a week. And during the summer, it's the same thing. I would stay for a week, or sometimes 2 weeks, actually. And while I was gone, witnesses knocked. And, at that point, they were so done after the situation with the mega church and not getting the questions that they wanted to get answered. And they accepted a study right off the bat. So when I got picked up from my dad's house, we weren't going home. We were going to the Kingdom Hall. And that was my first meeting. Yep. And that was my first meeting. Yeah.
Wow. So no, I don't know. They didn't soften the blow for you at all, did they? I mean, it was straight from dad's house to the Kingdom Hall. You didn't know this was coming.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so was this just your mom? Had she remarried, or did she have a boyfriend, or
yeah, so she had remarried around when I was about 5. And by that time, so my stepdad, he has a stepson, my stepbrother, and then they had a daughter together, my little sister. So, and then on my dad's side, I have another little brother and little sister, and a stepsister. So,
okay,
2 sets of siblings, 2 sets of houses, 2 sets of rules, two different worldviews. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because when you said, I think you said something about like they came and got me or whatever. I didn't know if like your mom came with Jehovah's Witnesses and got you, or who it was who came and picked you up. So you had other family involved then.
Exactly. Yeah.
Siblings and stuff who were
Mm-hmm.
part of this, or step siblings.
Yeah.
Wow. So what was it like? Can you remember that moment? Can you remember what was it like going into a Kingdom Hall at 10 like that?
It was, well, having come from, going to the other churches, it was very different, because there is no, Sunday school sort of thing. There's no separation for the kids. It's just whatever the adults are hearing, that's what the kids are hearing. A lot of use of the Bible. It was very different and very structured. I mean, you could, right from the get-go, you could tell something was different about it, and it would take me a little bit to realize what that was. But even just from that moment, it was like, okay, this is something different. This is not just a religion. This is something different. So.
Yes, it is. And you no motorcycles or anything.
No.
I mean, Jehovah's Witnesses are definitely devoid of pomp and circumstance, or anything fun. It's a very bland, boring environment to be in, especially as a kid. So, I guess, did life change for you then, right there around 10? So did you all start going regularly? Did this become? You mentioned your last birthday. I mean, did anybody sit you down and tell you life was about to change, or did life just change?
Yeah, it was pretty immediate, and my family, they jumped right into it. So they had studies. The family that studied with them, they had two sons, one of which, the one that studied with me, was also the one that helped me get out.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah, crazy story. But yeah, but so we were all set up with studies. Just like you said, we were sat down, no birthdays, no Christmas. And at that point, I was getting ready to turn 11. So yeah, no 11th birthday. Um, and we were also getting ready to go to school. And we were sat down and talked through the whole speech about, this year's going to be different. This is all things you have to do. No saluting the flag. You won't be able to participate in the Halloween parties, the birthday parties, the Christmas celebrations, Valentine's Day stuff. And that was all. Yeah, that was all immediate. There was no kind of working up to it. I mean, they really just kind of dove right into it, and yeah, and everything changed.
That's really tough. For parents, I think, that become Jehovah's Witnesses, um, you'd hear people sometimes say that they thought it was kind of nice because they didn't have to celebrate holidays, they didn't have to prepare for things, they didn't have to do any of that stuff. But for kids, you're a 10-year-old kid, and all of a sudden, not only are you losing a lot, but then at school, you suddenly have to be very different from
Yes.
everybody else. So how did that go for you, making that change at school? What was life like at school for you after that?
Man, I can still remember very clearly that I think they call it like an open house. That first, before school actually starts, they have you come in, and you're able to go in the classroom and meet the teacher, and the parents meet the teacher, and all that stuff. And I remember coming in and having to give my teacher that pamphlet, and I can't remember what it was called, but there was a pamphlet that basically was saying, "Hey, I'm good. I'm a Jehovah's Witness, going to be in your classroom. This is what to expect. This is what I can do. This is what I can't do." And that was a lot. And then once school actually started, even though I would say my mom definitely did a lot of preparation to and we even did like mock flag salutes, where she just to have us practice. And when you're actually there and you're 11 and you just want to fit in, and especially since just the year before in fifth grade, I was just a regular kid. So having come there, this new year, and it was a lot. I actually remember, and this part of me is crazy. I'm almost embarrassed to say it, but it's the truth. There's times when I would actually purposely kind of walk super slow to class in the morning to be late, to miss the flag salute, or asked to go to the bathroom, right before, because it was a lot. It was terrifying. And like I said, you just want to fit in. You don't want to be different. Even though you're told that it's bad to fit in, you just want to.
It's normal. And so
Yeah.
it just hit me. So this is your after fifth grade. So you're going into sixth. Does that mean you were changing schools? You're going to middle school now?
No, so at that time, that was actually the last year where sixth grade was still in elementary
Oh,
school for
okay.
that district. Yeah, so same school, most of the same friends carried over into the new classroom, and it was even more hard because in fifth grade, we were pretty known. Me and my siblings, we were pretty, kind of the in group. Um, so eyes are on you even more, and they're like, okay, why are you not doing what you were doing last year? Everybody else is coming back to school this new year, the same, just a year older, and something's different with you. So
And those are things that a Jehovah's Witness parent, when they become witnesses later in life, can't understand, because they've never been a kid and had to take those stands. That is a lot for a 10-year-old or 11-year-old. It's whatever. It doesn't matter.
yeah,
That's a lot for that kind of a change to happen, and for you to suddenly have to uh, be different, stand out, not necessarily for good reasons, and probably didn't even understand. And I remember the brochure you were talking about. I think we just called it the school brochure.
Yeah.
because everybody took it to school. It was just like this thing that you took the school brochure to school, and it like told the teachers who you were, which when you think about it is really weird, that you have to like go in and give them a pamphlet to explain who you are. And you can't do that yourself from most kids.
Yeah. Said it perfectly. Yeah. They're already judging you, or, already have an idea of you even before you start.
Yeah, man, that is weird. I've never really thought about that. It was hitting me as I was saying that, just how strange it is to have somebody else write up a pamphlet basically defining you, and then to have to go hand that pamphlet to somebody else and say, yeah, I think this is me. Right. And then the teachers know what to expect from you and what you will or will not be allowed to do and everything. I think that's underrepresented. I don't think that's talked about quite enough. I think that's a lot.
Yeah.
And that's very culty when you think about that.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. So school suddenly shifts for you, the way you feel there, the way you have to act. Did you lose friends over this stuff, or did people start to? You went from kind of on the in crowd, I guess. Like, did you suddenly become on the outs?
That's exactly what happened. Yeah. Yeah. So I wouldn't say I necessarily lost friends, but I definitely was treated differently. Yeah. Because you stand out now. And I would also say, just because of the witness environment, just because of everything. I mean, even though at that point I had only been in that environment for maybe 3 or 4 months, but even in that short period of time, I had learned to self-edit myself, and I was already kind of a reserved kid to begin with. So for me, all I did was just make it so I didn't say hardly anything. I became super quiet and just super shy. And that stuck with me for a while, honestly. And just from that, you end up kind of alienating yourself from people that were just your friends before. So
yeah, I understand that. I think a lot of people kind of shut down in some ways because it's safer. It's safer to just not say anything than to say something that could potentially get you in trouble. You don't know the rules yet, especially when you're a kid. So you're trying not to step on any of the landmines that are placed out there that you don't know about yet. That's tough.
Yeah.
So things were changing there. How did life change at home? Were you all did you all go into being this family that you said they kind of dove in head first? Were you all the family that was at all the meetings and stuff? Did you all still have fun? Because I know for myself, I was like 8 or 9. My family became Jehovah's Witnesses, and a lot of the fun went away. A lot of the things we had done before then, we just no more amusement parks or anything like that. A lot of things just kind of died. Saturdays were for other things now. So, did life change drastically for you in that way?
Yeah, man, no more Pokemon on Saturday morning. Yeah. That's yeah, really, it was a loss of fun. And it was a lot, having to give up birthdays and holidays. And they did take it seriously. We were at every single meeting. We were doing, just like we were doing the, practicing for class, we were practicing for service too. So my mom would have us come and knock on the front door and give a presentation. And it was a lot of loss of free time. I mean, times when I would normally be able to sleep in or play, that was now really, given to this new religion that I was still, learning what was what in. Just a lot of really big, rapid changes. And the other thing was, I can remember at that time, I didn't really get in much trouble in those ages. So I felt like I was a good kid, but when I joined that religion, everything that I liked, like Harry Potter was coming out at that time, getting popular. Everything that I liked was now bad. A lot of the video games I liked was now bad. And because I hadn't learned to not like them yet, and because I associated myself as being bad now. And, that just, your confidence just, and so that was, at that age, that was all going on, just within that first year of being a witness.
Man, that's as a coach, when I work with people, one of the things, most people are struggling with is this feeling of never being good enough. And that, you think about just the concept of original sin, that people are just bad inherently. And then, you liked things that you didn't know you weren't supposed to like. So you see that they kind of sell you the disease so they can sell you the cure. They make you feel bad about yourself so that then you need them to feel good about yourself. And you said right off the bat, you said Pokemon on Saturday mornings. And I know that was, at least in my family, that was out. And I after leaving, one of my cousins, I think, said, and I didn't realize this, that I think my mom had taken all of, I had He-Man toys and I had like all these G.I. Joes and stuff like that, Transformers. And I guess my mom went through all my stuff and took all of the accessories, which would be weapons or staffs or whatever, and like took all the stuff and I guess any character she deemed to be bad and like shipped a big bag of stuff off to like my cousins or something. And, I don't remember that at this point, but I do remember that a lot of my toys went away. And so I guess you felt that sting too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Toys, free time. Yeah. Yeah.
The fun died.
Yes.
And now you guys have a different kind of fun, handing out pamphlets on Saturday morning as a child.
Yeah.
So obviously it sounds like your family really kind of went gung-ho into this. Did the tone of the house change? I mean, becoming Jehovah's Witnesses or getting involved in that is a lot. It is a lot of stress on parents. It really is, that they didn't have before. And I often wish I could be a fly on the wall or go back, in a time machine and see, who were my mom and dad, before Jehovah's Witnesses and then after Jehovah's Witnesses. Because I know it changed them a lot, or I think it changed them a lot. And I know my dad was stressed all the time and my mom was too. Did you see a change in the stress levels of the house?
Yeah, stress levels definitely went up. And just like I was being told that everything that I liked was bad, they were getting that same treatment. So, and they were also being told that, not only is everything that you like, all the stuff that you like is bad, but you are also now responsible for the lives of your kids. And if they go down, you're now blood guilty. So yeah, it was a lot of stress on them too. I will say my stepdad, he studied, but he never went into it. So it ended up just being my mom, my stepbrother, me, and my sister. But even that added some stress because now my mom is having to go on her own. And you're kind of viewed differently when you're not a whole family unit and the witnesses. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people look at you with the side eye a little bit. They're supposed to be rallying around you and supporting you in this divided household and all that stuff. That's not usually quite what happens.
No. Usually so when we first came in, yeah, we were rallied, around, you get the whole love bomb thing. But yeah, eventually that died, especially after my mom got baptized. Yeah, it just all, up, now you're in, we got you in, you're on your own now. And and you weren't here, all these years when we were developing all these cliques and friend groups. So you're on your own.
Yeah, you absolutely are. And that's something that happens all the time. They love bomb you while they want to get you in, but as soon as you're done, I mean, they're done with you and it's on to the next one. the next new interesting person that they're hoping to get in to be one of them. So then, how was life at the meetings? Did you find any enjoyment in any of it? Was it tough for you? I mean, obviously, at some point, I know as we go through your story, you took it on as your own, right? But as when you're a kid and you're getting into this, and life has changed so much, what was your family life like at the Kingdom Hall?
Yeah, so after Kingdom Hall, it was very structured. We had to sit there and pay attention. My mom would have us, I think they're called taxonomies or something like that, where you have to write, like you do like A through Z, and anytime they say, something that starts with A, something that starts with B, fill that all out. We had to memorize all the books of the Bible. I mean, it seemed like we were almost, at the beginning, it was, it's all about show, and we had to play that game too. All about appearances. So we had to show up now with suits on every time. We had to, get new book bags and all that kind of stuff, and just look the part, memorize all the books of the Bible, and we would even, after the meeting was done, we would even have to, show it off to the elders, check, look at my kids, they remembered all the books of the Bible in order. So, just trying to be accepted, as me and my siblings and my parents were all together trying to be accepted into this thing. As for, so we did have some friends, we did make some friends, but even at that age, especially within that first year, it was like these kids they're my age or younger, but when you talk to them, it's like you're talking to somebody that's getting ready to retire. It's, I mean, everybody had this really robotic, monotone way of talking. Everybody is, filtering themselves as they're speaking. And I hadn't learned that skill yet. Later on, I thought it was all weird. And of course, later on, I've become exactly that. But at that age, when you're still on the outside looking in, you still have a little bit of yourself still in there, before you put on that new personality hat. It was weird. Yeah. I hate to say that, but that's what it was, and yeah, so we did make some friends, and we went camping with them and all that kind of stuff. And so there was some fun to it. Yeah. But it was very structured. And like I said before, I did have to learn to be careful what I said. I say I like this, or I watched this, and suddenly you're being told, oh, that's bad, and so yeah, you learn to just filter yourselves and shut down, basically.
Yeah, it's not it's not just that's bad. It's that's bad and you're bad for liking it.
Yes.
That's what's implied, isn't it? Right? They're
Yes.
always imputing your motives for liking a thing. And I think that is a good point. How many young children are acting like little mini adults inside the organization, being propped up to be that way. It is weird.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, and which just goes to show we weren't really allowed to be kids.
No.
Let's face it. What child sits for 2 hours listening to, meetings and has no ability to get up and move around or go take a break for a minute or something? That's a lot to ask of a kid.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you fuss, you're getting dragged off to the bathroom. Yeah, that's crazy.
And everybody knows what's happening in that bathroom.
Yeah.
You're about to get it.
And it's normalized, though. It's normalized. Yeah.
Oh, it's normalized to the point where people laugh at it. It used to bother me even as a witness. I would see people laughing and snickering at a kid who's getting pulled out, going, no, 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 because he's about to go back and get beat. And we all knew he was about to go get beat, and everybody laughed at it. It wasn't funny. I knew that wasn't good. I knew that was weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
But again, it's about appearances. It's about control, you know, and those are the methods by which they attain that control. So, so how did things begin to progress for you? You know, you're 10 when you're introduced this 10, 11ish, and then you know there's a progression there. I don't know when you got baptized or anything like that. So, you know, how did things go as you um, went through your adolescence and teenage years?
I mean, well, your my entire worldview completely changed. I mean, for one thing, and that's kind of what what set me into it. I mean, it's all F.E.A.R, fear, man. That's that's how. I mean, they have that over your head with everything. Fear of Armageddon, fear of being shunned, fear of not doing enough. Fear, I mean, at that age, 11, 12, 13 years old, fear of being persecuted was so big. We were starting to learn about World War II and all that kind of stuff. And, how the Nazis treated the Jewish people. And, and we were being told that could happen to you. At some point, during Armageddon, the government's going to turn on the witnesses. And, somebody may hold a gun to your head and you have to be willing to say, yes, I'm a witness. I'm going to stay true to this. And that was terrifying, terrifying. And too much to put on a kid. It was, life became scary. I mean, up to that point, from as far as I can remember, far back as I remember, maybe like 2 or 3, up to 10, 11 years old, life was fun, just being a kid. I mean, like, it had stresses, just no childhood is perfect, but life was fun. But once we were in it, life became scary. And that's when anxiety, that's my first time I started having anxiety in me. I started to get chronic headaches and stuff like that. Another thing is I learned to be, this is going to sound weird, but I learned to be racist, and not from a ethnical, or not from a ethnicity standpoint, but spiritually racist. You learn that there's a separation. There's these worldly people, and then there's you. And anybody that's not in the Watchtower organization is worldly. And, and just like somebody that's, racist in a more traditional way, we were taught to basically have lower expectations of people that were worldly. Doesn't matter how good a person they were. If they were not a witness and they were worldly, suddenly, can't leave your wallet around them. Can't, I mean, just stuff like that,
Yeah, every picture of the people in the world in a publication, the woman is a prostitute, the man is putting a needle in his arm, somebody is holding someone up at gunpoint. That was to signify worldly people, but if that was about the pigmentation of someone's skin or the place that someone came from, and they were being identified that way, it's just prejudicial, and that prejudice was being put into all of our minds and hearts.
Exactly. Yeah. Right from the get-go. Yeah. And it does change you. It changes how you look at people. It gives you this sense of superiority, and that's, I think, and you're taught that you have all the answers now. And between the two of those, between that sense of superiority and being separated, and being taught that you have all the answers, you have this culture of arrogance that's in there, and that gets into you too, just unknowingly. So I like to say, I was a very nice, smiley asshole. I hate to say it, but that's really what I was. I learned to be that because that's just what I mean. There was a selfishness in me, and it wasn't there naturally. It was just taught to me.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I forgot your original question.
No, that's okay. That's a great point, though. I used to talk about how I was an asshole. are just very judgmental. And so Jehovah's Witnesses, they attract narcissists and then they breed narcissists. They teach you how to feel better than, and they teach you how to use blame as a tool to put people down, and they teach you how to judge others. And I don't know how you felt about everything at 10, 11 years old, but for a lot of us as kids, there was no us and them. It was just us, and then somebody had to teach us there was a them. I mean, just like in anything to do with race or any other thing. So yeah, Jehovah's Witnesses, they create this it's like a JW supremacy.
Yeah.
Kinda is.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about it, but it really is. You really think that, like, you're it. You're the chosen people. You're Jehovah's chosen people, and you kind of look down on everybody else, and it's really an unattractive quality.
Yeah.
Putting it very nicely.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. So you then so the fun was taken away from you, is what we were talking about. So you lost the fun, you gained the fear, and this worldview for you had changed, where you were starting to see yourself and the others differently. And then, how did that all influence how you walked through your, teenage years, let's say?
Well, just from that, you learn conformity. So, everything that you're being taught is not to be understood, is to be accepted. And just from that, as we ended up becoming Unbaptized publishers, we ended up, really kind of taking it seriously. I was still at that age. There's a part of me that was still like, this is too much, too much for a kid, too much to put on me, especially since I also still had this other view when I would go to my dad's house and things were more normal. And, but even then, around Christmas time and birthdays and stuff like that, there's almost this point where I'm looking down on my dad and my sister, which is crazy. You're going to look down on your parents at that age, but that's what you're told to do. And separate them into, this is bad, this is good, of actions that you're doing. That's, you put yourself above even.
I was wondering about that, as you're becoming a Jehovah's Witness, you've talked about the two houses, the two different worlds to some degree. How did it feel going back to your dad's place? I mean, is that like, did you have judgments of that beyond maybe getting, talking about Christmas or something, but he's quote worldly. So how did that impact how you saw him?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah. And yeah, it impacts everything. Yeah. I mean, not only my dad's house and my siblings there, but also the extended family on that side. You view them all as worldly, and which means that your view of them is now lower, which is completely messed up. But at the same time, I also saw that they were good people. And this is my dad, who I love, my stepmom, who I love, my brother and sister, who I loved. And it's like, okay, well, they don't deserve to be destroyed. And I think that was the part of me that was having this tug of war, was like, this is too much, and some of the things that they're saying at the meetings, I couldn't fully understand it. Later on, I will learn to accept it, but you're not supposed to understand it. You're supposed to accept it. And that's what ended up happening. So.
Wow. Anecdotally, I've always noticed, that it seems, I don't think anybody's done any studies on this, but people who are raised in divided households, or have that exposure, at least to the world in general, to me at least, it seems, just as an observation, that they are more likely to be able to leave at some point, to be able to get out of that. And I think it really helps in the long run that they've had exposure to something else, but I'm sure it's really tough in the interim when, you know, you're a kid and now you feel these mixed ways toward your own people. That's rough.
Yeah, yeah. And it's even more rough, you know, during the holidays when I'm being told you have to do this. You know, don't open the presents or don't do this, you know, and you know, God's watching you while you're there, you know. And you know, it's same, you know, like I said before, it's all about fear, you know, fear and control. Even when you're outside of their midst. And I mean, it was really, really tough. Yeah.
So where else did the fear lead you as you started going down this path, you know, getting older?
Yeah, so we got became a unbaptized publisher when I was around maybe 13 or so. Um, and then around that time, we started to really progress in it. And then eventually, um, we got switched off to new studies because the family that was originally studying with us, they ended up leaving to a different congregation that needed more help. The dad was an elder and the mom was a pioneer. They were that it family, you know. So they ended up going off to a congregation that needed more help, and we were set up with new studies that would eventually get us baptized. But before that, we had a new family come in, and they were even more of an it family. The dad was like part of the head of the RBC and stuff like that. The mom was pioneer. They had the sister was in some foreign language. I mean, everybody was doing something, you know. And they came in, and that was our first time seeing the preference that elders, family members sometimes get, especially elder sons. So he, you know, the son would get to do mic running, stuff like that, you know, whereas me and my stepbrother would have to fight for it and ask for it. And we, in the midst of all that, we were also kind of scooted off to the side, even more so, because this new family came in. They were invited to everything. Everybody wanted to be around them. They were just a power family, power couple. And at one point during the, this is when we still had the book study at someone's house. So after the book study, the son and that family came to me and my brother and was saying that, you know, basically like, hey, I'm planning on getting baptized this summer. And what are your spiritual goals? Because if you don't have the goal of getting baptized sometime soon, I'm not sure if we can still be friends. And so that put the pressure on. And also at the same time, my mom was getting pressure. And I remember her having these talks with us about, you know, we were 15 at the time. So 15, when you're at that time, it was 15 and a half, you could get into driver's ed and all that stuff. And she was saying that, you know, that's not going to be allowed until you're baptized. And also saying that, you know, she gave this umbrella analogy where, you know, right now you're under my umbrella, so that if Armageddon came, you still be safe under me. But now you're getting older, you have to make the truth your own. And, you know, so basically at 15, we were pretty pressured into getting baptized. We went through with it. Me and my brother got baptized on the same day, one right after the other at our assembly hall. So.
And so you were 15 when you got baptized?
Yes.
Wow, that's really tough. You know, I've trying to think. I've known of people. You know, I just always knew, like, if you don't get baptized by a certain time, that people look at you weird and such. For that other kid to come to you and say that, I wonder what kind of pressure he was under to get baptized himself. That's tough because you want to. You know, again, you already went through one adjustments that led you to not be accepted so much by your peers when your family started becoming Jehovah's Witnesses around 10 or 11, and life changed. And now here you are in this thing. And now somebody else is telling you, hey, you know, you kind of have to do this thing if you want to stay part of the, you know, the clique.
Yeah. Yeah. And I should add, speaking of that, so after sixth grade ended, we were switched to being homeschooled. Now, it's not quite the same because my mom was a certified teacher. So for us, it was not easy. In fact, when I did go to college, college was easy. But yeah, we did, that pressure was put on her as well, because there's a lot of other kids in our hall that were homeschooled. And, being a certified teacher, she felt that she could do it. She could do a better job than the public school. So, we were taken out. And, that also adds to the feeling of separation.
Yeah, separated once again. Was your mom? I imagine that's got to also be a lot of pressure on your again on your parents, right? On your mom in this case. Did she get a lot of pressure to teach other people's kids or to do anything since she was an actual teacher?
Yeah. It's funny you said that. She was jumped right into that. Yeah. Yep. We had some shared classes with some of the other kids, and yeah, she was expected to kind of take on that role for everybody.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, let's face it, a lot of the people teaching their kids at home have no skills and don't know a lot of, they have limited education themselves. How are they going to be able to teach their kids? And, for most Jehovah's Witnesses, education is just looked down upon. So I guess at least those in your orbit at that time might have, those around you might have gotten a little higher level of teaching with your mom.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess, like you said, she was probably hard on you guys, but that could actually be a good thing. So
yeah.
At least you got an education out of it. A lot of people didn't get much. Wow. So you got separated in that way as well. And now here you are being told you've got to get baptized or I may not be able to really hang out with you anymore.
Yeah.
So you got baptized. Anything come of that?
No doves or anything like that. But
doves floating down from the
heaven. But things did definitely change. So at that point, the fear and pressure is on you even more, because now that you're baptized, you can now be disfellowshipped. So pressure for when I went to my dad's house, it was no longer, during Christmas time and birthdays and stuff like that, still participating. It was, nope, you get your presents early and unwrapped. And that was kind of their way of still trying to include me in it without breaking the rules. Definitely a lot of pressure at the meetings too. I mean, to answer up and reach out for responsibility and stuff like that.
I always like to ask people, especially brothers who got baptized young. Did you have to? I don't know. In the congregation I grew up in, there's this rite of passage where you get baptized, and at the next maybe Thursday night meeting or a book study or something, you're going to be asked to say the prayer. And so did you have that moment come up right afterward?
No, surprisingly, no. At that time, they didn't have anybody who was younger say it.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, you weren't missing anything. It was a lot. There was a lot of pressure too, as a kid, to get up there, and you had to, it had to be this, elaborate thing, right? Mm-hmm. In order to fit in. What am I going to say? So you didn't miss out there, but you, as a young brother, I'm sure that there were, like you said, there were pressures put on you. What all did they want you to do at that point? Did they start putting pressure on you to join lawn maintenance, cleaning, leading groups out in the service, anything like that?
Yeah, yes and no, because we, in that congregation, we were still viewed very much as kids.
Okay.
So there was a lot of things that we actually weren't allowed to do, that if you had gone to another hall with people the same age as us, you would see them doing. There was almost like this, it was kind of gated off from us a little bit. Now the elder son, he was able to do it. And he was the same age as us. But us, we were not able to do it. But we were
expected to do it, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. I'm sure. Yeah, I can imagine the pressure he was under. Yeah. But we were encouraged to like help out with the literature counter, and a lot of pressure to keep our hours up. A whole lot of pressure, which was hard for me, being, you know, being so shy at that age, going to strangers' doors, and they're looking down, seeing this little teenager, trying to talk to them about join us or die, basically. And so that was a lot. That was a lot, and we had to keep our hours up in order to even be considered to do mic running or anything like that. So, just a lot of pressure. Yeah, in that way. And eventually, I would say probably about a year after getting baptized, we got to a point where just seeing the preference of how the eldest family was treated versus us, just us not being able to do much, of the things that we wanted to do. We ended up getting pretty close to leaving or dropping out, falling out. And as a last resort, we ended up switching congregations. And then that spun up everything again. Now we were the it family again. We were, we were invited to everything. This congregation had more people that were more kids, younger families. It was a larger congregation too. So we just got invited to everything, and life as a witness definitely changed at that point. And that was also the point where I myself kind of got more serious about it too. So I was around 16 at that time.
Okay. It is interesting. I think a lot of people change halls looking for that hit of the love bombing to try to, it's like, why am I here? I don't fit in. I'm not being used in any way. I don't really like it here. And so being able to make a switch for potentially greener pastures, so to speak, feels like the thing to do. I know we did that ourselves, my wife and I, just trying to find somewhere we felt like we belonged. So you all so when you said that we thought about leaving, I mean, was that you and like your brother, or was your mom involved in that as well? Was she, because your stepdad hadn't taken to it, right? So was your mom being stumbled, or?
That's exactly what it was. Yeah, she was not feeling the love. We had some just people in there that I don't know if they had undiagnosed mental illnesses or something, but probably, I mean, we had somebody like break into our house. That was some sister at the hall break into our house, because there's no boundaries, when you're in there. So she was.
You had a sister break into your house?
Yeah. She was trying to, because we were missing meetings at that time, and she was trying to call us and check on us. And I think we were actually on vacation. We were out of town at some point at that time. And so there was some door that she was able to get open. She walked through our house looking for us, and then later on complained about how messy our house was. This is the environment.
While you're in there, uninvited guest, why don't you do a little cleaning since you're there? Wow, that is crazy. I have never. That's a first for me. I think hearing of somebody literally thinking that they have such ownership of you, and they're so concerned about you that they literally come into your house. That's crazy.
Yeah. Wow. So my mom was pretty low at that point. And I would say at that point, she was probably going more for us than herself. In fact, I could even remember a couple of times when she would just have one of the people from the hall pick us up and take us, and she would just stay at home. So. Mm-hmm.
Oh, no, I can understand somebody breaking into your house and then giving you counsel. Might be one of those things that you're like, wow, this place is a little little much. I think you said that earlier. This is too much.
Mhm.
Like this was a little too much for your mom at that point, which makes sense. So you guys then switched to another congregation, and you said so. I guess this switch is what helps, I guess, flip the switch for you a little bit and helped you get a little more involved.
Yeah, because we just had more friends. At our old hall, we had friends, but they were few, and we had so much pressure from the elder son. At this new hall, yeah, there's so many kids there, and we were getting invited to everything, and things stayed really good there for a while, until my brother got reproved. And when he got reproved, it was a public reproval. And when he got reproved, it's completely 180. We were, for one thing, me and my sister ended up just being guilty by association, basically. So we stopped getting invited to stuff. And we, again, we just were getting that side eye, look again, and people just were not really too sure about us, and at one point, my mom even called one of the parents, to just ask what's going on, because we would go to the meetings and the kids would be all in a circle talking about, it'd be on a Sunday, they'd be talking about this gathering that they had, that Saturday, that we were not invited to and did not even know about. And, that was really tough, really, really tough. And as much as I had started to become stronger in it when we first came to that congregation, that there took me down, because now we're not getting invited to anything. So now we had these friends in our neighborhood, that we started to get closer to them at that point. And then you notice that, okay, but these friends in the neighborhood, I can be more myself around them, and come out of my shell a little bit. And whereas these friends at this hall, they're not inviting me to anything. And when I am invited to stuff with them, I have to shut myself back down. And I wasn't even doing anything bad or saying, it's just, you have to be so careful everything you say.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be some big thing. It could be any little thing. A song you like that had a word, And then I remember one time saying something about a song I liked, and somebody being like, "Oh, doesn't this have a certain word in it?" And it just didn't even dawn on. Okay, all right, I hate the song now. I'm a bad person. All right, And you just get so used to being beat down for everything that you like.
Yeah. And I mean, at that point, I was 16. MP3 players were starting to become popular around then. iPods, that I got my first iPod, and it was an iPod Touch. I told everybody it was an iPhone so I could feel cooler about myself. And but at that age, I liked 50 Cent, and I thought it was the coolest person ever. And and they did not. And I remember there was this one brother who we had gotten kind of closer to, a little bit older than us. And he literally went through my music and deleted everything that he thought was inappropriate. Yeah. And it's just there's no boundaries, and that's also it made me step back into myself even more, because everything was a loaded question. Everything. Something as simple as, what are you doing this weekend? What's your favorite movie? And the real world, this is general stuff. And the witnesses, that could be a trap, What are you doing this week? Oh, you're not going in service? What's your favorite movie? Oh, that has spiritism in it? Violence? So everything was loaded, and like you had said before, you start to see these landmines, and you're anticipating them, even before you know that they're there, to the point that you just don't say anything.
Yeah. Again, the lack of boundaries. My God, to go through some kid's iPod and like delete the things that you don't think they should have. Like, who does that? And I mean, I'm sure they didn't like Fitty, because he was a rapper. He also had a song about birthdays. Uh, so, there had to be some reason to not like him, but just that style of music, period. Rap, heavy metal, all that stuff. They were always railing against this stuff. And so I'm sure that was really hard to not be able to express yourself in that way.
Yeah. That's exactly the word right there. Expressing myself. That was not allowed anymore.
Oh no.
Yeah.
They'll tell you what you're allowed. They remember, they have a brochure that tells you who you are as a kid. They'll tell you who you're allowed to be as you get older as well. They're just not. They just have lots of magazines to explain that one. But yeah, it's that's tough. And did you feel? I don't know. I'm going to ask a question here, and you can tell me if because I know that. Did you ever feel different? Like race comes up inside the organization as well. You talked about racism as far as how you saw people, right? But did you feel like you were ever singled out for that? Like the type of music you liked, or just anything?
Yeah, even beyond music. And they say that there is no prejudice or racism in there, but it is there, but it's just really cleaned up to the point that it's almost unrecognizable unless you experience it. So I know for me, yeah, you do feel singled out because it's almost assumed that you like rap music and stuff like that, which I did, and I still do. But
yeah, and honestly, that's what was making me think about it is, but also rap music is cultural, right?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I mean, I liked rap music. I'm just like rap music, but it's not just that. It's like it is an expression of certain parts of your life or the way you might feel.
Yeah. It's just another music type. You can find any kind of music that has bad in it if you look for it.
Of course.
But I'd say even beyond just the music, as far as experiencing racism in that religion, in that culture, there's almost this let me see if I can form my words here. There's almost like two different kind of witnesses. There is the people that are on the fence, are kind of half out, and or that will kind of push the limits, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're Black, it did feel like it was almost assumed that you were one of those people that were kind of the ones that would push the limits, one of those kind of witnesses, and so we had to go an extra mile to really prove ourselves and talk even more robotic, and really make sure our answers were expressive and over the top, especially when we were first joining the congregation, because everybody has a new view of you. They don't know who you are yet. Or I guess they have some idea of who you are because they send that letter introduction thing, which is crazy. But it did feel like we had to prove ourselves more than somebody of another race. Yeah.
I mean, I had talks with people even, when I was one of Jehovah's Witnesses, I as a lot of witnesses do, I mean, honestly, I did have a lot of friends of different races and ages, and I really did. And we would talk about this stuff at times, and the pressure that they felt. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't even ask the question. I just
no. It needs to be talked about. It needs to be exposed.
Yeah. It just popped into my head as we were kind of talking about it. I don't know. It's something that I'd actually like to do an episode on in particular at some point, with people to have some of that discussion, because I do think that there was a lot there. There were undercurrents of things. I mean, and then look, nobody's perfect, and we're all people, and we can all experience prejudice in different ways, for sure. You know, whether it was the economic lot in life in the organization, certainly we're treated differently there as well, and a lot of other things, right? And like you said, not having your stepdad with you at the meetings, like even that makes you, you know, people, everything's about differences. And you know, there's a lot of us and them inside the organization, even though we were supposed to be so united. Just really wasn't that, was it?
No.
No. You mentioned
Not at
clicks
all.
several times. The clicks were real. And if you're not in a clique young and you can't keep that clique, and you find yourself at some point outside and you've got to get into another clique, man, you're the odd man out. It's tough.
Yes.
Real
Yes.
tough. Because those other established cliques run deep usually, and a lot of times they're familial, so you can't do anything there.
Yeah.
So you're in this new congregation. Things are good for a second, and then your brother got reproved, and now you and I think you said your sister were kind of lumped in with that. There's that guilt by association. So how did that affect how people, you know, saw you, and did that affect how you went going forward?
Yeah. Especially since people would always mix me and my stepbrother up. And I can actually remember the night that he was going to be announced, I stood up and went to go ask one of the other brothers if I could run mics during that time. So I wanted to make sure that people saw it wasn't me, you know, which it's crazy. You have to do that. I couldn't stand by him during that point. I had to make sure that, you know, to separate myself. It's crazy. I couldn't even be supportive. I wasn't allowed to do that. But yeah, people look at us differently. Our whole family, and it kind of stayed that way for a while. And then shortly after I turned 18, I got my first car. That also made me be viewed differently, because at that time, you know, I grew up with Fast and the Furious, so all that stuff, you know. So I like the sporty cars. I got myself an Eclipse, and you know, it's 2 doors, so that's not a service car. And my thinking, I'm like, hey, I don't have kids. I'm not a pioneer. I don't really have much responsibilities or anything. You know, why shouldn't I be able to get something fun for myself? You know, but that's not allowed. And so I was viewed differently because of that. And, you know, viewed as in a way that I'm not taking it serious enough.
I feel you so hard there. I mean, first of all, I like an Eclipse. Second of all, you know, I had this moment at a car lot where it was like, do I get this 4-door Mazda Protege, or do I get this Mustang convertible? And of course, I wanted the Mustang convertible. But what did I get? I got the Protege. Because I had to get the thing, you know, I was a pioneer, and I knew I was going to have to, and actually I needed a car to drive for doing that. But man, you know, to this day, I always regret on some level not getting the Mustang, because it would have been a fun car. And I think that, but to get judged, just another thing that you can be an us versus them. Like, they're judging you because you bought a Mitsubishi Eclipse, and not like hey, that guy's got a fun car kind of way, but like, that guy clearly doesn't love God because he bought a Mitsubishi Eclipse.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. You didn't buy a service car, therefore, yeah, you must not be 100% dedicated to it.
Yeah, you just don't care.
Because it's all about show, and that's all about appearances. But yeah, after getting the car, shortly after that, my mom ended up just completely fading out and just done with it. She got fed up with just the lack of love. She had now been to, well, really probably 3 congregations, because she, you know, back when, you know, I was a baby, she went there, didn't feel it. Then she went to the one that we got integrated in, didn't feel it, and now this new one and wasn't feeling it. And plus she saw how, her kids were being treated. I wasn't getting invited to anything. So my sister was actually getting teased by the girls in the hall. During that time, the economy was just really rough around that time. We were going through some financial troubles. And my sister told me this story about how, she was after the meeting and all the girls were standing in the circle and looking at each other's shoes. And they were saying, oh, yeah, I got these new shoes. Oh, your shoes are cute. Your shoes are cute. And then they looked at my sister and just like, oh. And she was getting laughed at and teased. And so for all of us, it was tough. And my sister went through the same thing that me and my brother were going through, where it's like, okay, now we feel more comfortable around these people that are quote unquote worldly than we do around the people that we're supposed to feel more comfortable around. So, but yeah, long story short, yeah, she ended up leaving. I had a car, so now I was responsible for taking myself and my stepbrother and my sister to meetings and service and all that. So I had to really step it up at that time.
So now the pressure ratchets up on you. Now you are the one responsible for the spirituality of your siblings. How much older were you than them?
So my stepbrother is actually only a few months younger than me, but I was still viewed as the oldest. My sister is 5 years younger than me.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of pressure on a kid who's not being seen a certain way already to perform. You could have taken that two ways. You could have said, I can't win here. Forget it. I'm done. And you also could have said, I want to win here. And so I'm going to dig deeper, push harder, and try to make this work. So how did you go?
I went the second option there. I pushed harder. Yeah. And plus, we were getting, it's funny. Before that, we were kind of ignored. And then once my mom left, now we were seen again. And we were now seen as, these kids that were coming on their own without their parents. Which even that kind of puts pressure on you, because now you have, now your ego's being puffed up. But yeah, I stayed that way for a bit. And then my brother ended up getting disfellowshipped a little bit, probably maybe 2 years after getting reproved, and about a year after my mom left. So, and then that took us back down again, where now we're being seen again as, okay, what's up with this family? Again, not getting invited to stuff. Again, my sister getting teased and not included. And it was just a lot of confusion. And through all of that, eventually my sister finally said, you know what, I'm done too. And, she was also going through her teenage years at that time, and that can already be enough as it is, and she was just done. So then it was just me.
Wow. Last man standing at that point. That's tough. You're feel for your sister getting made fun of like that. It's hard enough. It's one of those things where, especially, you don't expect your brothers and sisters in, as at the Kingdom Hall to be making fun of you like that. And, if you're the person at a congregation, I've been at some congregations where there are a lot of well-to-do people, and I was not that person. And you do definitely feel left out at times or ostracized a little bit.
Exactly.
I feel for that's a situation it's not easy to, because people are looking at you and judging you again, and that just doesn't feel good to be judged. So now here you are, last man standing. Now you're under the microscope because you're it. Wow.
Yeah.
So how did that feel how did it feel? And, I guess so you had to shun your brother, or did you? Or, how did you have to deal with all of that? Because you're one of Jehovah's Witnesses, a baptized brother in good standing, and now your family's kind of fallen apart around as far as the witnesses go.
Yeah. As far as my brother's concerned, he ended up moving out around that time, and just kind of changed his lifestyle. And so we ended up just getting kind of distanced just naturally. So it was almost, as the shunning almost became just by default, I guess you could say. Although I we would talk every now and then, but and the shunning was something that I never really fully agreed with. I could see right away that, okay, that's really unhealthy to just kick a person when they're down and kick them out into this world that they don't know, and I know that he went through a whole lot, after leaving, and just being someone that being raised in this thing and being separated out, and then just being kicked out into this new world, and you don't know who you are. Yeah, so that was tough. I know on my side, things didn't really change at home too much, as far as my relationship with my mom and sister. My mom would still come when I had a talk or something like that. And it was actually during that time that, so after I graduated from college or graduated from high school, I went to college for a couple of years, just got a architectural design program thing. That was 2 years. And since that was all I was allowed to go for. And, but then, the economy was still recovering at that time, especially in regards to architecture, building new houses and stuff. So I was unemployed for a long period of time I was in my early 20s at that point. And during that period when I was unemployed, I was able to go out and service a whole lot more. And, you just go through the routine, and especially since my family had all gone, that routine became even more just automatic, even when I wasn't fully feeling like I don't really want to go. It's just like, okay, well, it's Thursday night. This is what you do. It's Sunday night. This is what you do. It's the weekend. This is what you know. Just spinning that wheel. And, and of course, through all that, because I was the only one, now I'm being even more looked at. It was different when my brother left and my mom left, where people looked at me differently. Once everybody was gone, I wasn't looked down on so much. I was looked at as an example now. And that puts even more pressure on. So now it's really like, got to stick to the routine. Everybody's watching you now. And eventually, because of that, I ended up finding something that I was good at, because I hated, shoot, 100% honesty here, I hated service. I just hated that. I was completely fine with sitting in the back of the van, being driven along, chauffeured to people's return visits until 11 o'clock break time. And then, put in that stretch for that extra hour. So
that's a good day there when you can just ride around in the car pretty much all day. It's so great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, as much as you've talked about being kind of shy and stuff, I'm sure service wasn't
your
favorite thing.
No. I mean, anxiety attack every time ring the doorbell. I would even unknowingly kind of knock like lighter than usual, because I just was like, okay, I was hoping that they wouldn't hear, and then the first time would say, oh, you got to knock harder, or did you hear the doorbell? I was like, yeah, I heard the doorbell. Did you not hear it?
as you're pressing beside the doorbell so that I can get something.
But during that time, I even without this, I could set aside the shyness, and because I was really good at writing, and so I ended up being pretty good at giving talks. I think it was the number 3. Yeah, I think it's number 3 talk. That 5-minute talk that you could give on the
a number 4.
number 4. There you go. Yeah,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sisters had
Yeah,
3, so it was,
yeah.
yeah. So you got to give number 4 talks. Now, how did you feel? Now, you were a good writer, but how did you feel getting up on the platform and doing that?
At first, it was pretty hard, but I had wrote one good talk, and I can still remember it, where it was so simplified, and I always hated how all the talks were just lecture style, and I wanted to make something fun, and I always loved bringing up little props. So I made this talk, and I can barely remember what it was about, but I think it was about faith and just praying and being, waiting for it, expecting something. And I associated it to going through a McDonald's drive-through, and you order, and then and then in the talk, I had this McDonald's French fry box that I brought up. And after that talk, everything changed, because it was like, okay, everybody liked it. I had finally found something that I was good at. My ego was getting puffed up a bit more. As I sucked at service, but I can do this. And so that became my favorite thing. And it got me noticed. And at 22, I ended up being made a ministerial servant.
Wow, that's interesting. You found your place. You felt at home finally, because you did this thing that everybody liked and approved of. And yeah, you were the kind of brother I would have liked giving talks, because I liked it when people brought up props or had something, because they were usually so boring. So your speaking ability, I guess you were going out in service quite a bit, as far as because you had mentioned being unemployed at the time, and so probably got your hours up. And so they saw all that as a young brother reaching out.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
So how did that feel, being appointed a ministerial servant? And how old were you at that point?
I was 22.
22. So 22 and a ministerial servant. How did it feel? That's pretty good for, be that age in the organization that's looked up to, that you be that young and be a servant.
Yeah, and I never pioneered either. So I remember they brought that up, like, oh, you're the only one who got appointed young without having pioneered first. It did feel good. It did feel good. I was never one to care so much about titles, though. So it was a little bit different, but it still did feel good. And things changed right away. The way people saw me changed right away. I remember actually the night that I was announced, I was running mics that night, and one of the other ministerial servants came up to me and said, hey, congratulations, but just so you know, people are going to be looking at you more now, and you were chewing gum while you were running mics. That's a no-no. So make sure it's basically just saying, be very careful. And he was right. As annoying as that was, he was completely right. There was more pressure, more responsibilities. There was also, it was immediately people acted towards me like they were intimidated by me. Especially, my peers that were my age that were not appointed. And it was just weird. So it felt good at one point, but it was also just like you're taking on more weight now.
Yeah, it's just more pressure again, isn't it? It's the pressure ramps up. I remember a brother in my congregation told some sort of, I'll just say it was a dirty joke. I don't remember what it was about. He told some sort of joke, and I think his mom overheard it or something, and ended up getting all of us hauled into the back of the congregation, me and some other friends and stuff. I'm like, I didn't tell the joke. And because I was a ministerial servant and this guy told a joke in my presence, so everybody else got to leave the meeting and I had to stay behind and get told how I was an example and how I needed to watch things and all of this. And I'm like, I can't control what joke the guy told. Like, what do you want me to do? I'm supposed to preemptively like mind control him or something so he doesn't tell a joke. And it's just, there is a lot of pressure, especially as a young ministerial servant. That brother who told you that was absolutely right. And I was told that several times, like, you're an example. Everybody's watching you. You have to do everything right. And yeah, everybody was watching every little thing. I mean, you chewed gum, Justin. Like, in the Bible, it says you're not supposed to chew gum and handle microphones at the same time. So says it right there in the scripture. It's just so crazy, but there's so many unwritten rules. Yeah. And again, more landmines you're expected to know are there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how did that go for you, being a ministerial servant?
Yeah, a lot more responsibilities. That's when the prayers did start coming in. And I don't think I had even a single prayer that went off right, because that's where that nervousness and shyness did start to come back, because now you have to, when I was giving talks, I had the script right in front of me. But in the prayer, you're, your head down and you're expected to just come up with this stuff, and they expect it to sound a certain way and be structured a certain way. And yeah, it was really tough. It was really, really tough. Just a lot of pressure in every aspect, being now you have to lead out for service. And so that added more pressure to it. Yeah, and a lot more responsibilities. Meetings changed drastically. It wasn't anymore sitting down and, listening and following along. Now it was, you're up to do the whole meeting. And staying, and when you, and even though you're up, you're still required to participate. So you still have to find, it's just everything, the pressure and the anxiety just goes up. And, again, that's when I had started really getting the chronic headaches. And I used to have this thing in my chest where just the sharp pain when I breathe in too much. And it was all just anxiety.
So did you, I was thinking about the prayers. I guess that's more like extemporaneous speech, as they would say. And so, that's off the cuff. And so there, again, the landmines, right? You don't want to say the wrong thing, or whatever the case may be. But it's a little different when you have a talk and you have your own words in front of you. So did you have to give any of did you have the parts on the meeting, like question and answer parts? Those are always fun, to ask the question and look out at all the blank stares, hope that somebody will raise their hand. I see you laughing, so you identify with that.
Oh yeah. and then after their answer, there's a pressure you have to have something to say after they give their answer, so you can't just say, oh, good. You have to, so you have to basically only half listen while you're also preparing in your heads, some response. And, at the beginning, I didn't know to do that, and so, it just really that first year of being a ministerial servant, a whole lot of counsel, a whole lot of after the meeting ends. Oh, hey, can I talk to you real quick? Notice you did this. This is what you're supposed to do. And that just makes your anxiety go up even more, especially when you have another part, the next meeting. It's like, oh, and it just makes you into a perfectionist,
Oh yeah, it absolutely does, because you're trying to control anything that you can because you feel out of control. So perfectionism is out of control. But yeah, honestly, doing this podcast and interviewing people, I'm listening to every response, and at the same time, I think having ADHD helps, because I always have multiple tracks running in my head anyway. So then I'm thinking about, well, how can I follow this up? What should I say? What questions can I ask? And it is hard to ask. It is hard to do that, on the podcast, but it's also, I remember those days standing up there and you would ask, sometimes it was the simplest questions too, that were the worst, that you were asking from the platform, and people would just stare at you because the answer was like Jehovah or just something, you know, it was just such a dead simple question. Anybody could answer it. And so I think everybody's waiting for a little kid to raise their hand or whatever. Nobody's raising their hand.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, it's not Jesus, it's and hoping that they will give you the right answer. It's just really, it was brutal standing up there. And then comes the public talk. Did you have any of those?
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, it took a while to get to that point. And I'd say this was another instance where I could see the difference between people that were elder sons and people that weren't. So there was another male civil servant who appointed actually after me, and he was allowed to do public talk pretty much right away. Whereas me, I think it took 3 years. Took 3 years to get to that point. And when I did give a public talk, it was split in half. So it was like symposium style. So I gave the first half of it, and then another brother gave the second half.
Yeah. That was my first one was supposed to be that way, but I stepped down about a week before the public. I was like, I don't want to do this. So at least you followed through, I guess.
Yeah. And it went good. It was eye-opening though, because when you give a public talk, I would say even the number fours had more freedom. I had always had the impression that public talk was just like you pick a subject and then you just write about it. No, not at all. They have everything that they want you to say. And I still found some way to kind of make it fun, but it was still very structured, not much freedom. The thinking is already done for you. So
yeah, I remember noticing that because that was the only outline I really ever saw, other than I think one or two my dad had showed me at some point for some reason. But yeah, that was the only outline I ever saw. And I was like, well, wait a minute. They tell you exactly what they want you to talk about. They have all the scriptures picked out for you. And I don't know. I didn't like that thought a whole lot.
Yeah. Not at all.
It's hard too if you're prop guy, because you've got to, how do you work that into such a structured environment already? All right. So, well, then how did things go for you as you're obviously here talking to me. So you're not a ministerial servant anymore. How did things continue? What was the trajectory from there for you?
So shortly before I gave my first talk, actually, no, well, I'd say about a year before, I started working for this company. There's a JW owned company. It was a coffee delivery business. And that was the first time I had the rose-colored glasses kind of come off. And because you know how when you're a witness, the way you view other witnesses, you put them higher up, So even when they make a mistake, it's not as big of a deal as if a person who was not a witness did exactly the same thing. And that was working there. That was the first time I saw, just because a person is a witness, does not mean that they are a nice or a good person. So we had, the people there telling us, they're putting more and more and more work on us and hours on us and saying, we don't want you to take lunch breaks. And trying to find loopholes in the law. Just crazy stuff that I saw there. Just the backstabbing, the way people acted outside of the Kingdom Hall. It was really just an eye-opening experience. And so, long story short, I left there, and then I joined another company that was where I was actually able to use my architectural design degree. And in this company, I'd say about 80, probably 90% of the people that work there are witnesses. And then my entire management structure was all witnesses. So my boss was a witness. I think he was a ministerial servant. His boss was an elder. His boss was an elder, and the other boss's brother. And the owner of the company was an elder. And then you have a lot of pioneers and stuff mixed in through there. And again, same thing there. The rose-colored glasses come off, and you just see the BS. You see how these people move around rules and the backstabbing. I mean, people spying on each other to see, are you really working? Are you, and they're not in management. I mean, just insane stuff. So I was working there, and about a year after working there, I gave my public talk. And about 2 months after my public talk, I was, so basically at that time, you start to see all your friends start to pair off and get married very quickly. That date for 6 months and married, and you don't even know each other. But that was tougher for me too, because my confidence just from being in that event was already trashed anyways, then you have to watch everything you say. So you feel like you can't really be yourself. So dating was pretty hard in there. And so I ended up getting kind of developing like this sort of crush on this person that worked at my local grocery store. And I didn't have any real intentions of asking her out, anything like that. It's just a crush, just playing with ideas, And but as a servant, I was curious to see, okay, if I did ask this person out, and and my intention was, I'm going to make her a witness, and like, if I did do that, would I have to step down? Would I get reproved for that? What could happen? So I went online. I know I couldn't ask that directly to the elder, so I went online, and I figured, okay, there's somebody out there that has the same question. I stumbled upon the ex-JW Reddit group, and I found my answer. But what I also found, though, was, and at that time, I didn't even know what the term ex-JW meant, which is crazy. But I always thought that people that leave were called apostates, and I have memories of, not only hearing talks and stuff saying, apostates are these crazy people, mentally diseased and all this stuff. But I also have memories of my very first convention when we first got into the witnesses, and there was people out there with signs and stuff. And, that was terrifying. So that's what I expected. And that's not what I found. What I found was people that were hurt. And yes, they were angry, but the anger came from a place of feeling wronged. They were not these crazy and mean, lawless people, And at that time, the ARC was also going on. So, and that was eye-opening too, because I always thought that, child abuse, that was a Catholic problem. That wasn't a witness problem. We're better than that. No. We keep it hidden, which is worse. and then we pay them off. So there's your donation money. And that was crazy. And I remember I was just shaking. And once I realized what website that I was on, but just seeing what I was seeing, it was like, it made me feel like, okay, I can keep looking, because all this stuff has been hidden from me. And these are not the people that I was told that they were. And that's when I saw my friend, I can say his name because he's out there, Wally, who I saw a picture of him in our assembly hall, and he had shared a post about how he would not be able to see his nieces and nephews anymore and stuff like that. And that was interesting, because this guy, he was an elder son. He had just gotten married. I want to say he was either an elder or very close to being one at that time. And so my view was, this guy, this is like JW royalty, basically. And his family is very known. So this guy, he has no reason to leave. So why would he leave? And then so he had made a website. I looked on there and I just saw a completely different picture of him. I saw the hurt that he was going through. I saw how he had to hide himself. I saw how he, just the pressure, especially being an elder son. I saw that he was unhappy, and I saw that he had questions that he was not allowed to ask. And from all of that, that gave me permission to look, even more permission to look, because it's like just someone that I never thought would leave. He has no reason to leave. He has everything to lose and nothing to gain from leaving. So why is he leaving? So I spent that whole morning until my phone ran out of batteries, reading, just, and at the same time, just sweating and just shaking, just having a full on anxiety attack, because I know that there's no going back from this. I know that I could fly down to Las Vegas and have the time of my life down there, and I may get disfellowshipped, but I can come back from that. But this, there's no coming back from this. This is going to change everything. And this was the unforgivable sin, you know. I went on JW Facts, and I think they must have gotten sued or something like that, because I went on there the other day and it didn't have a lot of the stuff that they had on there back then. But back then they had a lot of stuff, and just articles and stuff like that on there. And that was really eye-opening. You know, I saw that 1914 came from measuring the pyramids, something that, you know, I forget what it's called, The Greatest Mystery or something like that, by Charles Taze Russell.
The Finished Mystery, I think.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah. And the pyramid was the stone witness that was prophesied. And it was like, that's where he got 1914 from? Are you kidding me? I mean, this thing that is so crucial to everything in the witness faith was from that. And then you learn about Bessarim and just all of the other false prophecies, you know, that have happened throughout history. And it's just like, I think I found one website actually at that time where they were showing that out of all of the religions, all of the end of the world prophecies, and the witnesses were like one of the top, they had like one of the most out of everybody. Oh, and then you go back to that scripture, you know, it talks about don't follow a false prophet. And, you know, so I had this real tug of war in my head, and it stayed that way for a long time. I really was fighting it. I really wanted to stay, honestly. And anybody that thinks that people who leave are just taking the easy route, completely wrong. Staying would have been way easier, way easier. I could have kept my friend, I could have kept my job, all that stuff. Also during that time, like I mentioned, the ARC was going on. And that was around the time when I think it was Jeffrey Jackson, right, who made that stand. He went up on the stand, you know, you're under oath. And the guy asked him something to the effect of, you know, believing that, you know, do you believe that the witnesses are the one true religion, God's only, you know, religion, and, you know, the true mouthpiece, and, you know, all that stuff. I forget the exact terms, but I know I'm messing that up. But, you know, but I remember he said, I'd be quite presumptuous to assume that we are God's one true religion. And I said, whoa. You can ask Tim Cook from Apple to go on stand and ask him, do you guys make the best smartphones? And whether that's true or not, you'd better bet he would say, yeah, we think we do. We think we do. This guy went on stand and said everything that goes against what he tells his members.
Yeah, Tim Cook doesn't use scriptures like "be ready to make a defense before anyone that asks you for it," or asks one of you, or however it's worded. And you know, but Jeffrey Jackson certainly does. He tells people all the time, you know, that. And again, you know, you referenced it earlier, the Great Tribulation, the concentration camp examples, all this stuff, and you're supposed to be ready to stand up and to die for your beliefs. But that coward couldn't even say how he really felt in a totally non-pressurized situation in a court that really can only do so much. And he couldn't even tell the truth then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pitiful.
And if even this guy was saying on stand that it'd be quite presumptuous to say that's the truth, well then, hey, if even he's not saying it's the truth, now I can really dig in deep. But even still, it was still hard. It was still hard. At that time, I was still serving as a ministerial servant. I was scheduled for my next public talk, and this one was going to be a real one with just me, the full 30 minutes. But at the same time, I was seeing how, through all the abuse cases, the Catholics, I think the Mormons were involved, the Protestants, you go down the line, at the very least, they all said sorry. The witnesses, there was no apology. And even worse than not having an apology, the victims that spoke up were now being shunned by their family. And I couldn't, if we really believe that anybody who, that only the witnesses survive in Armageddon, that just didn't make any sense, that these people who were wronged in the religion and who left because they were wronged and really hurt were now being shunned and were now also going to be destroyed. No. So my mind started opening up, and you see things differently. And the meetings changed at that point. The meetings really changed. I really started to see everything that they were saying and see the unhealthiness of, you go to the convention and stuff, and they put up this person there as an example, and they say, be more like this person. This person refused their scholarship and chose instead to go to Bethel. This person quit their job because their hours were gonna, this person doing this person be more like them. And then you look at yourself and you're not allowed to feel good about yourself, at all. But still, so much control, even with all that, and my eyes being opened, I was still fighting it. So eventually what happened was, I took a cruise vacation. And on that vacation, how I don't know if you've ever on a cruise ship, they have some days where you're just at sea, and then there's some days when you're at the port and you're able to explore wherever you're at. And I took a cruise to Alaska. And so the days that we were at sea, there wasn't much to do. I had Crisis of Conscience on my iPad. And at the same time on my iPad, I also had my second talk that I was writing. So I was doing both at the same time. You want to talk about having one foot in, one foot out. It was crazy. And by the end of that cruise, I had finished Crisis of Conscience, and I had finished my talk. And I had fully decided at that point that it was time to figure out some way to step down from being a servant. Because it was, I knew that if you step down, they announce you. And I didn't want to be announced because I was still working for that witness company. And I knew that, that would reflect on me, and they would, start digging in, and, and I also knew at that time that I needed to start to fade. So I needed to be as invisible as possible. So I did my last public talk, and then I immediately switched congregations. And when I switched, it was a congregation that was in need. And it was actually also happened to be the same congregation I came back, that I started in, which was a mistake because people knew me there.
I was thinking you were going to go somewhere where nobody knew who you were.
I wish I did. But, and that's the reason I did that, is because, for one thing, it was believable. And the other thing was that my original intention was to fade over the course of like a year. And that, because my job was involved in it, that ended up not happening, actually. So I switched congregations, and they tried to ask me to become a ministerial servant in that hall. And I refused, and I gave some excuse about wanting to go back to school for something else, or I forget what I said, but And because of that, because I was never reappointed in a new congregation, I didn't have to be announced. So I was able just to kind of sneak under a little bit. And at that point, I started my faith immediately.
So how did your fade look? Was your fade, and did you just immediately quit going to meetings, period? Or did you, titrate down over time? How did you fade?
Yeah, I didn't fade very good. Don't do what I did. So, I mean, it was already a big mistake to go to a congregation where I was known in the first place. And I also had, I wanted to keep my pride, if that makes sense. So I didn't want to ever be announced. And I wanted people to know that I was not like silently reproved or anything like that, that I was still in good standing, because for some reason I wanted in my head, I wanted people to know that I was leaving, and have no reason to leave. And hopefully that would put questions in their mind. But that was wrong for me to think that. And, these people play by different rules. You can't use logic like that in there.
Oh, yeah. And that's common. I mean, so many people want to leave in a way where, they're concerned with how people would view them. Yeah. And so they really want people to understand why they left, but they're not going to understand. They're in a cult.
Yeah.
And if they could understand, then they'd leave too. So they don't get it. And they're going to judge you and they're going to think poorly of you. But, I give this example sometimes when I'm coaching people. There was one day I was walking down the street and there was a gentleman on the other side who was yelling at me that I was the Antichrist and the devil and 666 and all this stuff. He was a homeless man. He probably had schizophrenia or something like that. And, but I mean, I didn't believe him because he's not a person whose opinion I would value on the subject. And, the same thing with Jehovah's Witnesses. Once you leave, you have to stop valuing their opinion on the subject because they live in an alternate world. They live in a universe where facts don't matter. And they live, their judgments are very toxic and dysfunctional. So we have to learn not to value these aren't happy people with well-adjusted good lives. Why are we taking their advice or worrying what they have to think about us? But of course, the reason we do is because we've been gaslit and all these other things your whole life that makes you worry about what they think of you. So what you did was very normal. Everybody, thinks they can get out somehow where people are going to keep a high opinion of them.
Mm-hmm.
That would be an outlier if that happens.
Yeah. I learned that. Yeah.
You found that out too, huh?
Yeah. But yeah, as far as skating goes, I started pretty much immediately. Just, I would go for Sunday, but I wouldn't go for the midweek meeting. Or I would go, but only stay for half of it. So basically I would just try to not keep any sort of pattern. But at the same time, I was trying to keep people's view of me high. So every time I would go, I would always answer at least once, even though I did not take any time to study. I would, prepare at least one. And that, so my goal was to fade over the course of a year. I only lasted 3 months. And basically what had happened is, even though I knew I needed to fade, and even though I was done, they still had that hold on me. There was still this part where I was like, that saying, it's a perfect organization ran by imperfect men. That was ringing through my head the whole time. And I was just like, okay, these people are doing some, messed up things. But hopefully they'll fix it up, So my original intention was just, I'm going to fade out and just kind of stand back and just watch from afar. And during that time, I forget his name, but you probably will know what I'm talking about. There was a either an annual meeting or a JW broadcast or something happened where the guy stood up on stage and he was talking about how, you know, the apostates and the media are attacking witnesses over their child protection, you know, child abuse policy, and how they what's the word they use, abhor it, or you know what I'm talking about. They always say that. Yeah. And you know, then he said that we will never change our policy. And at that, and basically that is, you know, apostate lies. And I saw that these people are willing to lie to their people, and I couldn't take it anymore. And you know, again, the meetings change for you when you've woken up, you know, and you see through all the BS, and then adding that into it, I couldn't stand sitting there for even 30 minutes listening to it. I just couldn't take it anymore. And I also saw that the more, another thing that sped up my fade too was that the more I stopped going to meetings, the better I was feeling. My confidence was starting to come back. I was starting to feel like myself again, you know. So that also sped it up too, because I saw that I was becoming happier, even though my whole world around me was crashing down. I mean, to the point that there was even one time I went for the company I was working for, they used to do this thing where they would this yearly trip, and the company would pay for, you know, I think a night for you to stay in a hotel, and they would have this company dinner. And that was the first time I had ever been by myself in a hotel. Anytime else I had traveled, I'd always been with my family or friends. That was the first time I was by myself, and it was tough. I mean, I can understand people feeling suicidal. That was the first time in my life I had ever felt suicidal. Like, this is it. This could be how it is, where I'm just by myself, and I don't. You know, these people have deceived me for so many years. I don't even know who I am. You know, I was 25 at the time. Being 25, you don't know who you are. I'm going to lose my job. They're going to find some reason to fire me. I'm losing all of my friends. You know, I mean, it was really tough times where you go out and hang out with your friends, and you know this is going to be the last time you're going to hang out with them. That's going to be it. And you can't even say goodbye. It's just, because even that would raise too many red flags. You just have to, okay, that's it. Because at that point, they see that you're not coming to meetings anymore. Their view of you is changing. Now they're viewing you not as a friend, but as somebody that they need to help to encourage and bring them back in. And but you know the real truth, and you also know you can't talk about it with them. And at the same time, you also know that there's not going to be much that you can relate to them about anymore, because their whole life is that. Even though there's so many other things that you had in common, you know, that, you know, when you were hanging out with them, 95% of the conversations would be about those other things, and only 5% would be about meeting stuff. But still, that 5% outweighs everything else. And
yeah, they clam up if you don't want to talk about that stuff anymore.
yes,
they suddenly can't find that other 95%. That 5% makes them just shut down, and they just won't talk about anything.
Yeah. So losing all my friends and stuff, it took me to a place where it's like, I probably could have not came out of that hotel room, honestly. At least alive. That's where I was at. Because I mean, you really do not know yourself even. I mean, you've lost not only your friends, but you've lost yourself. And that was something I wasn't prepared for. They, you know, through reading all the ex-JW Reddit and all that stuff, you see people's stories about losing their families and losing their friends and being cut off. And I was mentally prepared for that. But losing myself, I was not prepared for. I mean, because you're just a husk of a person. Mm-hmm. And they told you who you are. So now you don't know who you are.
No, you just lost your identity. You were one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And when you get rid of that, well, who's Justin?
Yeah.
And you at least had the 10 years or so. I understand it's very little, but you knew that there was another life out there on some level. For some people who are born in don't even know that that exists. And ultimately none of us were ever allowed to be ourselves or find ourselves. And that's a common thing that we have to work on when we leave is okay, well, now that I'm out, who am I? And what do I want out of this life that I have left?
Yeah.
It's a very tough thing because those other people were who you were and the beliefs were who you were. So again, to reiterate what you said earlier, people act like, I hate it when Jehovah's Witnesses say, you're so selfish for leaving. Oh, that's BS. You know how hard it is to leave? It's selfish to want me to continue to believe like you and be like you because that's the only way you can accept me. It's extremely hard to lose your belief system, possibly all of your faith in all of this stuff, depending on where you land afterward, your own research, to lose your family, your friends, all of that stuff. There must be something huge there that
Hmm.
we are going for in order to leave. It must be something huge that is massively wrong that we are running from as well, that we are leaving behind in order to make a change like that. To act like it's just some selfish, guilty pleasure is it's so offensive for them to say something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And on top of that, you have to deal with the realization that you will die one day. I
Yes,
mean,
that is
do you
really
know we
tough.
didn't think that we would die? I
Yes.
thought that Armageddon was going to happen in my lifetime, so therefore I would never die.
Yeah.
And to have to face your own mortality, tough, very tough.
Toughest thing for me was the
Hmm.
mortality piece. A tough one.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so then what was your path out, I guess? I mean, obviously you're saying you weren't a super successful fader. You had your 3 months. So what did you do to leave?
Um, Eventually I got to a point where I just didn't care anymore, basically. So I had the elders calling me, asking for, for my time. Um, Even though my fate wasn't super smooth, I think it was smooth enough. And I think me refusing the being appointed a servant and stuff, I was able to fade under the radar just enough that it didn't raise too many hairs. But it was still tough, and and just not, people asked to hang out, and you just gotta say no or just ignore it altogether. Um, and then my job, when the Jehovah's Witnesses is a very small community, everybody knows someone that knows someone that knows you, and I knew that there were people there that knew that I was not going to meetings. And so that became very tough too. And then you have the ARC was still going on at that time. I mean, during that time they really started coming down on quote unquote apostates and calling them all liars and stuff. And so that for me was just the final straw. And just seeing how happy, even though I had that really dark night, after that, just seeing how happy I was becoming, and starting to become myself again, just kind of put the nail in the coffin. I'm like, okay, there's no going back to this, and they're not going to change for anybody. If they're not going to change to protect their kids, they're not going to change for anybody. So, then of course you when you read Crisis of Conscience, you see that they have that pattern of not changing for anybody, and the pattern of not admitting to fault. People that died for not accepting blood fractions, which are now okay, new life. Now they're okay, and those people that died, they just died faithfully. Even yeah, yeah. I can go on about that. Yeah,
But you'll be resurrected,
Yes.
Justin, so it's okay.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty clear that I just a quick tangent. I do remember there was a time when I was at the meetings. This is when I was still really in it, and the brother would go to this scripture, and he had a point that he wanted to prove, and so you go out, you read it, and at that time I was just bored, so those talks are they're just boring, and so I went and read the scriptures before that one and the scriptures out after that one, and I saw the patterns of, hey, these guys are just cherry picking things that say what they want to say, but really in the context of it is completely something else. The context about not using blood, that was obviously about not eating it, which, in that area and that time, that's in their custom. Even now, there's some cultures that, that eat blood. So it's not have nothing to do with using it in a way that's going to save your life. But yeah, you just see stuff like that. But back to leaving though, yeah, I had to be very careful with my job and really just trying to be as invisible as possible. But the longer I was away from it, the more I kind of forgot some of their things. So there was a time when there was this new person that started there, and that was the only person there that was around my age. Most of the people that worked at the company were older, and we were into this same video game stuff like that. And this person happened to be a woman, and there was no interest. It was just like, man, finally a friend, finally somebody I can talk to about this. So at lunch breaks, we would go out and go to lunch, and eventually my boss calls me into his office and says, I'm not talking to you as your boss, I'm talking to you as your brother. And says, what you're doing, going out to lunch together in the same car, that's not allowed. People are looking, and you basically, better. And I remember leaving that day just almost in tears, because I really did like what I was doing at that job. But at that point, I knew that as long as I stayed there, they had a grip on me still. So that became my next move, was just to leave the company. And while I was at the company, again, you're seeing the rose-colored glasses are coming off. I mean, they were already off, but now you're really seeing. I mean, I'm seeing, again, people just doing backstabbing stuff. There's another friend that I had that worked at another branch, and she was getting checkbooks thrown at her. And, her manager was just talking openly about all of her private financial business, and just crazy stuff, just no boundaries, no respect. There was a time when they were having a meeting, and somebody was talking about something, and one of the women there, said her opinion on it. And one of the elders that worked there said, stood up and said, you speak when you are spoken to. Otherwise you stay. I mean, it's just you see the misogyny now. You see how, it's so male dominated, and, you have to just set your clock back to, 1800s, because it's just.
No, it's terrible. So I wanted to ask you were so worried about losing your job. Did they have it worked out in some way? Because I know there was a local brother who employed a lot of people. He did it on like annual contracts. That way, if you got disfellowshipped or something, he could just choose to not renew your contract, because if he fired you, for religious reasons, now that's an issue. But if he just didn't renew your contracts, all right, there's no obligation to do so. And so he could just easily let you go. Were you worried that you were going to be fired, or did they have fail safes in place somehow to protect themselves?
No, I was, they didn't have that. That's really messed up. But I could see people doing that though. No, he didn't have that, but I was just legitimately concerned that I'd be fired, that they would realize that they had an apostate in their midst, basically, and that they would find some reason to fire me or lay me off or something. And during that time, the workload was staying pretty flat, but there for some reason they were trying to hire new people. And I don't know if that was the reason or not, but you already have that anxiety anyways, and it just felt that way. Like, okay, they are preparing to replace me, basically.
If nothing else, it's just wise. You know, you don't want to be around them if you're not going to be
Mhm.
one of them. So you
Yeah,
might as well go find something else anyway and be proactive instead of reactive. So that was wise on your part.
yeah. So I eventually did end up finding something else, and that's been pretty eye opening too, because now I'm at a company where the the witness owned companies, everyone that both of them that I worked for, it's like, this is the way that we've done things. So it doesn't matter if there's a better way of doing it. This is what we're gonna do. And they were very slow to want to change. This place is the exact opposite. You have a voice, they're open to change, open to improvements. So yeah, the it's really night and day. Yeah.
So then you've gotten your new job. You don't believe this anymore. Uh, your fade was limited at some point. So how did you end your fade?
Um, right at that point, right? Right when I left that job, I had no that was my last final tie to it. That was the last thing they had over me. I had already stopped going to meetings and service and everything else already. But now I had the freedom to just be more open. So I laid low for a little while. And then I eventually made a Instagram post that basically said, I'm done, because I wanted it to come from me instead of just having an announcement and people don't know if you've been disfellowship or if you left, and they don't know the reason. I mean, once they announce your name, you have no voice anymore. Mm-hmm. And so I knew people would unfollow me and stuff, but I just wanted to be able to say my piece.
What? So then you make this post, and that's that was your declaration about however you felt about the organization. Did you formally, like, is that how you disassociated? Did you say, I no longer want to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses in this? And then the elders just took that for what it was? Or did you write a letter, or how did it go down?
Yeah, I didn't want to write a letter because I didn't want to have to play by their rules anymore. Mm-hmm. But yeah, in that post, I did say, that I'm done. And that this is this is me formally saying that I'm no longer one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And I thought, yeah, then I walked away. Yeah, and I thought that was done. I thought that would be it. And that was around the time that I originally sent the message to you, and I thought that was it. And then I kept getting emails about the talk schedule and stuff like that at the meetings, and I would just delete it. And eventually it just got to the point where it's like, okay, you guys don't need to keep sending me this stuff. So I sent an email to the elder and just said, hey, I'm not in this anymore. I made this post. Please take me off of the email list, And at that point, they got me in touch with one of the elders. It was actually the second person that studied with me. And that was warfare, man. That was warfare over the phone. He had called me up and basically said, well, for one thing, said that, that just posting something on Instagram was not legitimate, and that it had to be officially done and they need to hear it directly from me. And I was like, okay, whatever. I will just do it. Just and we were on the phone for like 30 minutes as he basically trying to fight to keep me in. And it was weird after being away from it for not going to meetings. At that point I had not gone to meetings for at least maybe a year and a half or 2 years. And it was really weird to have this guy act like he is over my life, or act like he is has some ownership over me, or some like he is my guide or something. And It's like, no, I'm just done with this. And yeah, so that's where it ended. Then I was finally announced.
So I just need to point out. So people often say, I don't want to write a letter, or I don't want to do whatever because I don't want to play their game. But here's the deal. You're going to play their game because they're going to harass you. They're going to do whatever. And ultimately they do. Like, and I get it. None of us want to admit that they have control over us. But as long as they have our family or the ability to harass us, because again, they have no boundaries and can't take a hint and just let you walk away. Like, it is difficult for most people to be able to just walk away and then that's it. And a lot of people also say they want you to disassociate. No, they don't. They will argue with you. They will try to get you to not disassociate. I've known people that had to hire a lawyer to like send a letter saying like any further contact is harassment, disassociate this person officially, let's do this thing. Like they just want control. And it's very difficult because they're so invasive to like, there are games that are going to be played until you end it their way because somehow, usually, because that's just who they are. They're just that obnoxious.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm sorry you had to go through that because it's hard enough already. It's a difficult process, as we've already talked about, and then they make it so difficult. It's even difficult to disassociate, even if you follow their rules. Even if you send them the letter and you have it signed and all that. Like sometimes even then it's still difficult because they'll try to talk you out of it. They don't want to accept it. And then if you just try to walk away, they're going to start calling and showing it you're up at your house.
Yeah.
They're just like this they're like stalkers. They're really rough to deal with.
Yes. Yeah.
So you have this conversation with this gentleman, this brother. It's over now. You get announced. What do you do? Like, did it feel good to know that you were officially announced?
Yeah. Yeah.
It was
It
over?
felt like, yeah, it felt like that. I mean, I thought that all the cords had been cut, but it felt that final one, lingering one. That, yeah.
It's closure on some level, to some degree. So you've officially disassociated at that point. So I guess you still got your family today, but you lost a lot of friends that you had. So if you could say anything to the people who are shunning you today that were those former friends, what would you say to them?
I mean, well, first and foremost, I would say sorry, because in that environment that is so, where you have so much arrogance and thinking that that you have all the answers and that you're better, and just in myself of having to be so closed off. I'm sure I have said and done things in that environment that that were hurtful to people, and I know people did to me. So yeah, that's the first thing I would say is sorry. Second thing is I hope that they're okay, and the third thing I would say is question everything, even the things that you're told not to question, even the things that you're scared to question. Question everything with an open mind. Question everything, because if you're really in the truth, it should be able to stand up to any lie, and really question, and you will see, are you really serving God like you think you are, or are you serving a religion? Really a cult, honestly. And question everything. Really look into it. Just like we look into other people's religions, look into your own and see if you still stand where you are now.
And you can't question the cult with the cult's own. Well, actually, you could use the cult's own literature against it and break it down pretty easily that way. But it's like You've got to question that. You've got to go outside of what you're inside in order to be able to question it, and read other takes on it and get other input, instead of only listening to the same people who believe the same as you. You're just in a bubble at that point, and we can do that politically or in many different parts of life. Just get into bubbles, and these little echo chambers. But it's nice to get outside of these things. It's uncomfortable, incredibly uncomfortable, but to get outside of those things and start questioning. I think it's really kind of you to also apologize for some of the ways that you were, to people who would shun you. You know, I think it's kind of you, because we still did act in ways at times that were pretty cringy, and weren't. I think that also goes to show that you're actually, I think for most of us, we're actually better people outside of this, far better people in the way that we treat others and the way we see the people around us. So, so you left. How long have you been out now?
So it's been 4 years since that time that I started to wake up. It's been 3 years since my last meeting.
Okay, so about 3 years then, since somewhere around 2.5 to 3 years since you've been disfellowshipped, or I mean disassociated.
Since associated, probably it's that just happened back in August, so it's been close to a year since I've
oh wow, okay.
since I had that conversation with that phone call and finally did that. Yeah, but from when I made my own posts, yeah, it's coming up upon 2 years actually.
Okay. And so, you know, in the time that you've been out and with the ability now to think for yourself, and, you know, to grow, is there anything you've learned since leaving that's really made an impact on you?
Man, I mean, first things first, the importance of self-love. So important. The entire time I was a witness, I was being taught to love these spiritual figures that you can't see, but being taught that I'm sinful and imperfect and do more of this, do more of that, be more like this person. But you know, you're never really taught to love yourself, and that's really important, because if you can't love yourself, then you can't really show up fully for much of anything. So I definitely learned that, a lot of that. The need to find yourself. I mean, anybody that's in the process of leaving that's watching this, I would definitely say find yourself. Don't worry about trying to find what the real truth is. Don't worry about trying to find some new religion. Figure out who you are first. Because if you don't, man, you're gonna really you're kind of dangerous in a way. I mean, you know,
fall for the same thing. You just fall for somebody else who tells you who you are. You got to figure out who you are.
I had to. I mean, a lot of the stuff that you produce has been really helpful, and you know, you see that's not just you going through it. So that's been really good. I also had to learn to think of money in a different way, because when you're a witness, money's evil. So, and when you have that attitude of money's evil, and you're not allowed to make anything out of yourself. So, that's been different, you know, having to learn to invest. And, you know, I've read a lot of those Rich Dad, Poor Dad books, stuff like that, because it's just like, you have to learn to now think of money in a new way, in a more healthy way, so that you can actually survive and be able to retire at some point. And stopping self-sabotage. Goodness gracious. You self-sabotage so much after leaving because you're not fully yourself. You know, they took that away from you. So as in the process of getting that back, you do kind of, well, I shouldn't say it. That shouldn't be so general. I know for me, I did get in my own way a lot of times.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
we weren't taught how to pursue anything that we wanted. We didn't know who we were. And we weren't given any healthy tools to exist in the world. So, I mean, they set us up to fail. And then they give us self-fulfilling prophecies where they tell us, again, through the pictures, that in order to be in the world, you've got to, be this terrible, terrible person.
Mhm.
So you go out and you think, I've got to be a certain way that sometimes is very negative and harmful to yourself and others. And then you realize that's not who people outside are.
Mhm.
They're lied to. So, but in doing that, a lot of times you can rob yourself of opportunities, or we just feel like we have this ceiling that we could reach and nothing beyond that.
Yes.
Because why would you be worth, you know, um, believing or listening to, or reaching for the stars?
Yeah, yeah, that wasn't even allowed as a witness. Yeah, you don't make anything out of yourself in this world. This world is passing away, so why would you want to reach for something higher?
Mhm.
But when you leave, you do have to figure out what you want out of this life.
Absolutely.
Um, yeah, I mean, whether you believe in the afterlife or not, once you do figure out your beliefs, man, you're only you once. So, so you have to make something of it. I mean, and the other thing I had to learn was to talk to myself in a better way. I mean, my self-talk was so negative, and that just hurts you. And that kind of goes back to self-love too. And I think the last thing I really learned that's been big, I was thinking about it last night. When you look back, you see how much control they had over you. I used to not really like calling them a cult. I got kind of nervous about that. Even they still have that much control of me that even I still have the respect to not call them that. And because it's seen. It's not people in black cloaks in the middle of the woods. You can find your Kingdom Hall in your neighborhood. They're coming to your door. It's all
Which
seen.
makes
It's
it
nothing
even more
secret.
dangerous.
Yeah, but then you see that you look back, the further away you get from it, you see the control. And I was thinking, it's like, wow, you know, if everything was possible, God himself could take over the sound system at the next meeting and say, hey, you guys are in the wrong religion. This is a false religion. And if that was said, how many witnesses do you think would actually stand up and leave? None. Probably none. They probably assume that they're being deceived. So they have such a grip on them that even their own God cannot save them. That's a cult, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing about it. That's a cult.
It's what they use scripture they used to use, basically that if they didn't do the preaching work, God could make the rocks cry out if he needed to, and make these inanimate objects, preach his message or say what needs to be said. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if God did come down and tell them that it wasn't the truth. They wouldn't listen to it. They're
No.
too bought in. It's that sunk cost. They've given so much to it. It's a lot to leave that behind.
Yeah.
So you've obviously done some work on yourself. What do you enjoy about your new life since leaving? What do you enjoy about your life? And is there anything that you want, any goals or anything that you're going for?
I mean, mostly I just enjoy the freedom. Just be, there's no ceiling anymore. I can be whatever I shoot out to be. If it's good enough for one person, it's good enough for me. So just matters about putting an effort into it. I got engaged last year. So
Congratulations.
yeah, so that's been awesome. Just growing together and, enjoying life together. Reconnecting with my dad's part of the family. As a witness, I had to kind of almost keep them at arm's length a little bit, and only going over there every other weekend, and that kind of made that even easier to keep my arm's length. But now, I have been, trying to reach out and just get in touch with them again, because now you can view them at equal levels again, instead of looking down on them because your religion is telling you, or your cult is telling you that you're superior in some way. So that's been really awesome, and especially reconnecting with my other sister Kiera, and just seeing who she is, and same with my brother Jaron, and seeing who, and just being an older brother again. It just has been Yeah. You know, I mean, after you've missed so much, you know, it's nice to just see them for who they are. Um, Being able to invest in myself has been awesome. I mean, reading so many books. If there's, I mean, anybody leaving, man, get an Audible subscription and just drive and listen to all those self development books and help you to recover faster. You know, because and get counseling and stuff because that's really important to help you recover.
Oh,
And I mean, if there's anything I like, oh, sorry, cut you off. If
no, go
there's
ahead.
anything I like, probably the most of all has just been that my confidence has come back. I mean, just being able to sit here and look at you and talk to you for a couple of hours, man, I would not be able to do that before. But just, yeah, just being able to put myself out there and not have to force myself to be invisible. I can be unapologetically myself now. That's really awesome.
I think that's the best. I think that's a great way to end it.
Yeah.
You can be unapologetically yourself. I mean, what a contrast to the fear and all the pressure and everything that we talked about in your story. You just get to be you. And isn't
Yeah.
that, you know, it's sometimes when people ask me, well, you left Jehovah's Witnesses, what are you now? Like, I'm Mike.
Yeah.
That's it. Why do I have to be anything else but anything other than that? I'm just me. I don't need to be you. I don't need to be a label. I'm just me. And
Yeah.
I think that that's a really fun place to be in life when you can just be yourself. So good for you, man. I
Yeah.
appreciate
Thank
you
you.
sharing your story, and I'm happy that you get to be yourself, and you've uh, gotten engaged, and you've got all these good things, you know, in your life today. All these people that can also accept you for who you are.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.